Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold. For Dominic Cross, it had been chilling for 15 years. From his corner office overlooking the glittering expanse of Atlanta, he watched the city lights blur into a tapestry of power and wealth, a world that had once been stolen from him. Tonight, that world belonged to Sterling Kane, the heir to the Kane Enterprises throne. And tonight, Dominic was going to burn it to the ground. This wasn't a story about a hostile takeover. It was a story about a ghost, a man who had died 15 years ago and had been haunting the edges of the Kane dynasty ever since, waiting for the perfect moment to collect a debt that could only be paid in ruin. Sterling was a man who had been born on third base and thought he'd hit a triple. He wore his father's success like a bespoke suit, arrogant, complacent, and utterly blind to the rot spreading through the foundations of his kingdom. He spent his days in boardrooms, his nights at lavish parties at the Street Regis, and his weekends on the golf course at the Cherokee Town and Country Club. He was a king who had inherited a throne he didn't build, and he had no idea how to defend it. His wife, Sienna Kane, was the picture of Southern elegance and beauty. A former art curator with a mind as sharp as her cheekbones, she was now little more than a beautiful accessory on her husband's arm. She organized his charity galas at the High Museum of Art, smiled for the cameras, and died a little more each day in the gilded cage of their Tuxedo Park mansion. Sterling loved the idea of her, but he had long forgotten to love the woman herself. This story, however, begins with another man. A man who had been watching the Kane dynasty for years, his patience as cold and sharp as a shard of glass. His name was Dominic Cross. To the world, he was the brilliant, charismatic CEO of a smaller, innovative tech firm, Cross Innovations. But in the shadows, he was a ghost, a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Years ago, Sterling Kane's father had brutally and systematically destroyed Dominic's family business, a small but honest construction company driving his father to financial ruin and an early grave. The Kanes had erased his family's legacy without a second thought. Dominic had spent the last 15 years building his own empire, not for wealth, but for one single purpose: revenge. His plan began not with a hostile takeover, but with a handshake. He proposed a strategic partnership with Kane Enterprises, a deal to modernize their outdated security and data management systems. He presented it to Sterling as a can't-miss opportunity, a way to bring the old money real estate giant into the 21st century. Sterling, ever the arrogant CEO, saw it as an easy win. He saw Dominic as a young, hungry upstart he could use and discard. He never once looked into the cold, calculating fury behind Dominic's charming smile. "Welcome aboard, Cross," Sterling had said, clapping him on the back. "Don't get any big ideas. You're playing in the major leagues now." Dominic just smiled. "I'm just here to help, Sterling, to learn from the best." And just like that, the wolf was invited into the sheep pen. The demolition expert had been handed the keys to the building. The game had begun. Dominic's infiltration was a masterclass in subtlety. His team from Cross Innovations integrated seamlessly into Kane Enterprises, their presence a quiet hum of efficiency in the background. Dominic himself was a phantom, his access to their servers and data streams almost absolute. He spent his days identifying every weakness, every vulnerability, every over-leveraged asset in their multi-billion-dollar portfolio. But his true target wasn't the company's servers. It was the CEO's wife. He orchestrated their first real meeting at the annual charity gala Sienna was hosting at the High Museum of Art. While Sterling was holding court with politicians and investors, Dominic found Sienna standing alone by a sculpture, a glass of untouched champagne in her hand, her eyes distant and sad. He didn't approach her with a pickup line. He approached her with understanding. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said, his voice a low, warm murmur. The way the artist captures the feeling of being trapped, even in a wide-open space. Sienna turned, surprised. For the first time all night, someone had seen her, not just the wife of Sterling Kane. "Yes," she said, her voice soft. "That's exactly it." That was the spark. Their affair didn't start with a fire, but with a slow, dangerous burn. It was stolen conversations in museum corridors, accidental run-ins at coffee shops in Virginia Highland, and late-night texts that were about art and life and everything her husband ignored. Dominic listened to her. He saw her intelligence, her passion, her loneliness. He made her feel seen, desired, and alive for the first time in a decade. Their first kiss happened in the rain, under the awning of a closed shop in Inman Park. It was desperate and hungry, a collision of two people starved for connection. Soon, it escalated to secret afternoons in a boutique hotel in Midtown, the city sprawling beneath them, their shared betrayal a thrilling, toxic aphrodisiac. "This is crazy," Sienna would whisper, her body tangled with his. "Is it?" Dominic would reply, his lips against her skin. "Or is it the only thing that's ever made sense?" He was playing the most dangerous game of his life. He had come for revenge, but the lines were blurring. He was genuinely falling for Sienna, for the brilliant, passionate woman buried beneath the society wife persona. But he never lost sight of his goal. Every secret she whispered in the dark, every complaint about Sterling's arrogance and carelessness was a weapon he stored in his arsenal. She told him about Sterling's secret gambling habit, the high-stakes poker games where he'd lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single night. She told him about the shady offshore accounts, where his father had hidden money for decades. She told him about the one project Sterling was banking on to save his legacy, a massive, multi-billion-dollar development on the Atlanta Beltline, a project leveraged to the hilt, a house of cards waiting for a gust of wind. Sienna thought she was confiding in a lover. She had no idea she was arming an executioner. If you're enjoying this story, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next episode. With the keys to the kingdom in his hand, Dominic began to dismantle the Kane empire from the inside out, piece by insidious piece. It was a symphony of corporate sabotage, conducted with the precision of a master. First, he used the backdoors he'd built into their new tech system. He started small, creating glitches that delayed multi-million-dollar transactions, causing Kane Enterprises to miss deadlines and incur penalties. He corrupted data, making it seem like their accounting department was incompetent. Sterling, furious and oblivious, fired two of his most loyal senior accountants. Next, he targeted the Beltline project, the crown jewel of Sterling's ambition. Using the information Sienna had given him, Dominic knew exactly which city council members had been bribed to approve the zoning permits. He sent an anonymous, untraceable email to an investigative reporter at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, complete with scanned documents he'd lifted from Sterling's server. The resulting scandal put the entire project on hold indefinitely, freezing billions of dollars in assets and sending Kane Enterprises stock into a nosedive. Sterling was hemorrhaging money, and he had no idea where the bleeding was coming from. He grew paranoid, erratic. He accused his board members of betrayal, his executives of incompetence. The atmosphere at Kane Enterprises turned toxic, a snake pit of fear and suspicion. Through it all, Dominic was the calm in the storm. He was the strategic partner, the shoulder Sterling leaned on, offering advice and solutions that only made things worse. He was the trusted friend, the one man Sterling thought he could count on. "I don't know what's happening, Dominic," Sterling confessed one night over expensive whiskey in his office. "It's like my father's ghost is haunting this place. Everything is falling apart." "We'll get through this, Sterling," Dominic said, his expression a perfect mask of concern. "Every empire faces its challenges. The strong survive." But as he watched Sterling crumble, a strange, unexpected feeling began to surface in Dominic. Guilt. It was because of Sienna. He saw the pain and confusion in her eyes as she watched her husband unravel. She was trapped in the crossfire of a war she didn't even know was being fought. He was destroying the man she was married to, the father of her children, and he was using her to do it. One evening, in their hotel room, Sienna broke down. "I don't know what to do, Dominic. He's drinking all the time. He's yelling at the kids. The company is a mess. I feel like our whole world is collapsing." Dominic held her, his heart twisting in his chest. This was what he wanted, wasn't it? The complete and utter destruction of the Kane family. But seeing Sienna's tears, feeling her body tremble in his arms, he realized the victory was turning to ash in his mouth. This was the moment he should have pulled back. But the ghost of his own father and the 15 years of burning hatred wouldn't let him. He had come too far. The final act was yet to play out, and then came the plot twist. The one that not even Dominic, the master manipulator, could have ever seen coming. It was Sienna who delivered the twist, though she didn't know it. One night, after a particularly brutal argument with Sterling, she came to Dominic, her eyes wild with a desperate, dangerous idea. "I want out, Dominic," she said, her voice trembling with a newfound resolve. "I want to leave him, but I can't walk away with nothing. He'll crush me. My father-in-law made sure the prenup was ironclad. I need leverage. I need something that will guarantee my freedom and my children's future." Dominic's mind raced. This was it, the final weapon. "What do you have in mind?" "My father-in-law," she began, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The old man, he was more than just a ruthless businessman. He was a monster. He kept a secret ledger, not just of his business dealings, but of everything. Bribes, blackmail, affairs, even a suspicious death. A construction contractor who wouldn't sell his land. My father-in-law had him taken care of. It was ruled an accident, but it wasn't. The ledger proves it. It's his entire legacy of sin, all in one place." Dominic's blood ran cold. A construction contractor, he knew with a chilling certainty that she was talking about his father. "Where is this ledger?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "In a hidden safe in his old study at the mansion, the one Sterling never uses. The combination is the date my husband was born. He was always so proud of his heir. This was it. The ultimate prize. Not just corporate ruin, but criminal charges. Murder. The complete and total annihilation of the Kane name. It was more than he had ever dreamed of. But then Sienna delivered the second part of her plan. The part that changed everything. "I want you to help me get it, Dominic. And once we have it, we expose him. Together. We can drain his offshore accounts. The ones I told you about. We can take everything. We can run away, you and I. Start a new life. We can have it all." Dominic looked at her, and for the first time, he saw past the beautiful, sad woman he had fallen for. The same cold, calculating ambition that had built the empire in the first place. She wasn't just a victim. She was a player, and she had just handed him the gun to shoot her husband, expecting him to be her partner in crime. He had a choice to make. A choice between the revenge he had craved for 15 years and the woman he had grown to love. A choice between his past and his future. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. The original plan was no longer enough. The game had changed. And the final act would be a masterpiece of betrayal that no one, not even Sienna, would see coming. He smiled at her, a slow, dangerous smile that she mistook for agreement. "Of course, my love. We'll do it together. We'll burn it all down." If you're enjoying this story, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next episode. The night of the heist was a storm of adrenaline and deception. While Sterling was at one of his high-stakes poker games, an event Dominic had arranged through a carefully placed rumor, he and Sienna slipped into the sprawling Tuxedo Park mansion. The air was thick with the ghosts of old money and dark secrets. They found the study, the hidden safe, and just as Sienna had said, the combination was Sterling's birthday. The heavy steel door swung open, revealing a collection of documents in a single leather-bound ledger. As Sienna reached for it, her eyes gleaming with triumph, Dominic put a hand on her arm. "Let me," he said softly. He took the ledger, his fingers tracing the worn leather. This was it, the proof of his father's murder, the justification for his entire life's mission. But he didn't just take the ledger. He also took a small, almost unnoticeable thumb drive from his pocket and plugged it into the safe's internal computer. In seconds, it copied the safe's access logs. Logs that would show exactly when the safe had been opened, and by whom. They left the mansion as silently as they had come. The ledger their unholy grail. They went back to their hotel room, a bottle of champagne on ice, ready to celebrate their victory. "We did it, Dominic," Sienna said, her voice giddy with excitement. "We have him. We have everything." "Yes," Dominic said, his voice strangely calm. "We do." He opened the ledger, and there it was. The entry for the date his father had died. A cold, clinical description of the accident that had been arranged. A payment to a shell corporation. The final, damning proof. As Sienna leaned in to kiss him, to celebrate their shared future, Dominic took a step back. He held up the ledger, his expression no longer that of a lover, but of a judge. "Do you know what this is, Sienna?" he asked, his voice like ice. "This isn't just a record of your father-in-law's crimes. This is the story of my life. The construction contractor he had killed? That was my father. My name isn't just Dominic Cross. It's Dominic Cross Carter. My father was David Carter, the man your family destroyed." The color drained from Sienna's face. The triumphant smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated horror. What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about revenge, Sienna. The revenge I've been planning for 15 years. The revenge you just helped me complete. I never wanted the money. I never wanted a new life with you. I just wanted to watch your family burn, just like they burned mine." He walked over to the laptop on the desk and hit a single key. "Everything is gone, Sienna. The ledger, the access logs from the safe, the details of the offshore accounts you so generously provided. I've just sent it all to the SEC, the FBI, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. By morning, the Kane name will be synonymous with murder and fraud. Your husband will go to prison for the rest of his life. Your children's inheritance will be seized. Your entire world is about to end." Sienna stared at him, her beautiful face a mask of shock and betrayal. "You used me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You used me right back," Dominic countered, his voice devoid of emotion. "You were ready to abandon your husband, drain his accounts, and run away. You're a Kane, after all. Betrayal is in your blood. The only difference between us is that my betrayal had a purpose. Yours was just for the money. Good do match." He turned and walked towards the door, leaving her standing in the middle of the room, the champagne untouched, their shared dream of a future shattered into a million pieces. He didn't look back. The ghost of his father was finally at peace, and Dominic Cross was finally free. The fallout was apocalyptic. The morning headlines screamed with the scandal. Thorny empire implodes. CO arrested for father's murder and decades of fraud. The stock price of Kane Enterprises didn't just fall, it evaporated. The company was worthless overnight. The fortress had been reduced to rubble. Sterling Kane was arrested at his mansion, his face a mixture of confusion and disbelief as federal agents led him away in handcuffs. He never understood what had happened, how his world had collapsed so quickly and completely. He was a king who had been checkmated by a ghost. Sienna Kane was also implicated. The safe logs Dominic had copied proved she had been the one to access the ledger. She was charged as an accessory, her betrayal laid bare for the world to see. She lost everything. Her husband, her children, her social standing, her freedom. She had tried to play the game, but she had been outplayed by a master. And Dominic Cross? He disappeared. Cross Innovations, the company he had built from the ground up, was sold to a larger tech firm for a 9-figure sum. The money was wired to an anonymous trust and then funneled to charities that help victims of corporate crime. Dominic didn't take a dime. He didn't want wealth. He didn't want power. He had only ever wanted one thing, justice, and he had gotten it in the most complete and devastating way imaginable. Months later, in a small, unassuming cafe in a quiet European city, a man sat reading a newspaper. The headline was about the final sentencing in the Kane case. Sterling Kane, sentenced to life in prison without parole. Sienna Kane, sentenced to 10 years for her role in the conspiracy. The Kane empire, liquidated, its assets sold off to pay its massive debts. The man smiled, a small, sad, satisfied smile. He closed the newspaper, took a sip of his coffee, and looked out at the quiet street. The burning fire of revenge that had consumed him for 15 years was finally gone. In its place was a quiet, hollow peace. He was no longer Dominic Cross, the ghost of vengeance. He was just a man, free from the chains of his past. He had crushed an empire from within. He had brought a corrupt dynasty to its knees. He had avenged his father. And as he walked out of the cafe and into the rest of his life, he knew that some debts can only be paid in full, and the price of the Kane family's sins had been their complete and utter ruin. The story, however, didn't end there. Because Dominic Cross had made one critical miscalculation. He had underestimated the depths of Sienna Kane's cunning. He had seen her as a player, but he hadn't realized she was playing a completely different game. During her trial, Sienna's defense team presented a stunning new piece of evidence, a secret recording. A recording of her final conversation with Dominic in the hotel room. But the recording was different. It had been expertly edited. Dominic's cold, calculating confession was still there, but Sienna's role had been completely transformed. Her desperate plea to run away with the money was gone. In its place were her carefully crafted words, recorded later, making it sound as if she were a terrified victim, a pawn in Dominic's game. "You can't do this, Dominic," the recording of her voice pleaded. "This is insane. You're talking about destroying lives. I won't be a part of it." Dominic's voice, cold and damning, followed. "It's too late, Sienna. The wheels are already in motion. You're in this with me, whether you like it or not." The jury was captivated. The media narrative shifted in an instant. Sienna Kane was no longer a co-conspirator. She was a victim, a brave woman who had tried to stop a monster and had been threatened into silence. Her 10-year sentence was overturned. She was acquitted of all charges. She walked out of the courthouse a free woman, a symbol of resilience, her face a perfect mask of tearful relief. She had learned from the best, after all. She had learned from Dominic, and she had beaten him at his own game. From his quiet cafe in Europe, Dominic watched the news reports with a slow, dawning horror. He had been so focused on his revenge against the Kanes that he had never considered that Sienna might have her own agenda, her own long game. He had seen her as a Kane, but he hadn't understood what that truly meant. It meant survival. At any cost. He had destroyed Sterling. He had destroyed the Kane Empire, but he had created something far more dangerous in its place. Sienna Kane, unleashed. With her newfound freedom and the sympathy of the public, Sienna moved quickly. She used the last of her hidden resources not to disappear, but to rebuild. She leveraged her story, her victimhood, to secure interviews, a book deal, a speaking tour. She became a champion for women who had been manipulated by powerful men, her face gracing the covers of magazines. But behind the scenes, she was a shark, circling the remnants of her husband's empire. She knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically and literally. She knew which assets were undervalued, which properties could be flipped, which loyalties could be bought. She started a new company, Phoenix Holdings, a name that was both a promise and a threat. She visited Sterling in prison, not out of love or loyalty, but for power. He was a broken man, his arrogance shattered, his spirit crushed. He was desperate for any connection to his old life. "I need you to sign over your remaining assets to me, Sterling," she said, her voice as smooth and cold as marble. "The ones the government didn't seize. It's the only way to protect what's left for our children." He signed everything over without a second thought, grateful for her apparent forgiveness. He had no idea he was handing the last of his power to the woman who had orchestrated his downfall. Sienna's empire grew with astonishing speed. She was more ruthless than her husband, more cunning than her father-in-law. She had learned from their mistakes. She operated in the gray areas of the law, her hands clean, her methods brutal. In 5 years, Phoenix Holdings was a billion-dollar company, a new dynasty rising from the ashes of the old. And all the while she had one goal in mind, to find Dominic Cross. She hired the best private investigators in the world, sparing no expense. She wanted him found, not for revenge, for something far more twisted. She wanted a partner. She had seen his brilliance, his strategic genius. She knew that together, they would be unstoppable. Dominic, living under a new name, a new identity, felt the net closing in. He saw her face on the news, read about her incredible comeback. He saw the articles that called her the Phoenix of Atlanta. He knew it was only a matter of time. One day, a package arrived at his quiet apartment. Inside was a single burner phone. He knew who it was from. He answered it. "Hello, Dominic," Sienna's voice purred through the speaker, a sound that was both a caress and a threat. "Did you really think you could hide from me?" "What do you want, Sienna?" he asked, his voice weary. "I want to offer you a job," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "I'm building something new, something bigger than Kane Enterprises ever was, and I need a man with your unique talents. I need a partner. Think of what we could accomplish together, Dominic. No more hiding in the shadows. Real power, real wealth, everything you pretended not to want." Dominic was silent for a long moment. He had spent his life fighting a monster, only to create a new one, a more beautiful, more intelligent, more dangerous one. And now, she was offering him a seat at her side. "I'm not that person anymore, Sienna," he said finally. "Oh, I think you are," she replied, her voice a seductive whisper. "You're a killer, Dominic. Just like me. You can't run from what you are. I'll be in touch." The line went dead. Dominic stood by the window, the phone in his hand, looking out at the quiet city that had been his sanctuary. He knew, with a cold, sinking feeling, that his war was not over. It had only just begun. Dominic didn't wait for Sienna to make the next move. He packed a single bag, wiped his digital footprint, and vanished again. But this time, he wasn't running to hide. He was running to prepare. He knew Sienna wouldn't stop. She saw him as the ultimate asset, a king to be captured and placed on her chessboard. The thought sent a chill down his spine that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with a terrifying, familiar thrill. He traveled, not to quiet cafes, but to the dark corners of the world where information was a currency and loyalty was for sale. He reconnected with old contacts, the kind of people who didn't have last names. He liquidated a small hidden portion of his funds, the emergency stash he'd kept for a rainy day. It was raining. He began to build a new network, a ghost network, designed for one purpose: to watch Sienna Kane. He had her followed. He had her phones tapped. He had her company infiltrated, using the same subtle, insidious methods he had used on her husband. He was no longer the wolf in the sheep pen. He was the ghost in the machine, watching the new queen on her throne. He learned the extent of her ambition. She wasn't just rebuilding an empire, she was building a weapon. She was acquiring media companies, tech startups, political lobbying firms. She was collecting power in all its forms. She was becoming more powerful than her father-in-law had ever dreamed of being. And she was still looking for him. Her investigators were relentless, their reach global. He had to move every few weeks, changing his name, his appearance, his entire life. The hunter had become the hunted. One night in a sterile hotel room in Tokyo, he got another call. Not on a burner phone, but on his own secure line, a line that was supposed to be untraceable. He knew before he answered. "You're getting sloppy, Dominic," Sienna's voice said, the amusement gone, replaced by a cold, hard edge. "Or maybe you're just getting tired of running." "What do you want, Sienna?" he said, his voice flat. "I told you. I want a partner, but my offer has an expiration date. You've seen what I'm building. You know what's coming next. This is your last chance to be on the right side of it." "There is no right side with you, Sienna," he said. There was a pause. He could almost hear her smile. "That's what makes it so fun. I've acquired the last piece of your father's old company, Dominic. The original name, the logo, everything. It's mine now. A little piece of history, a reminder of where you came from, and a reminder that I can own any part of you I want. It was a masterstroke of psychological warfare. A final, brutal checkmate. She wasn't just coming for his future. She was taking his past too. Dominic looked at his reflection in the dark hotel window. He saw the tired eyes, the lines of stress that hadn't been there a year ago. He had thought his war was over, that he had won. But he had only traded one prison for another. The prison of revenge had been replaced by the prison of running. He had a choice: disappear forever and let her win, or turn and face the monster he had created. A monster who knew all his tricks, all his secrets. A monster who was, in so many ways, his perfect match. "You're right, Sienna," he said, his voice changing, the weariness replaced by a cold, familiar fire. "I am tired of running. It's time to come home." The line went dead. The game was on again. And this time, there would be no winners, only survivors. Before you go, tap that like button, leave a comment to let us know what you think, and subscribe so you're always the first to hear our next story. Your support keeps these stories coming.